Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Unscripted. I'm your host, Matt, aka Cut Corners. We've got a show about the power of music. If you know, you know, and if you don't, thank you for tuning in for the first time. Yeah, it's great to have our special guest today. Our guest has been one of my favorite TikTok accounts for a while now. After stumbling across his page, I felt like I had met a really cool friend who's into music and was putting me onto cool new things and concepts with an incredibly sophisticated taste and knowledge of stuff that I care about. And you can follow Derrick Gee on TikTok, which I highly recommend by just typing in exclamation point follow in the chat if you're tuned in on Twitch. So without further ado, please welcome Derrick Gee, aka G Derrick, to Unscripted. What up, Derrick?
G Derrick. Hey, someone took my name after I deleted my early TikTok. So it should have been Derrick G, and now it's G Derrick. But thank you.
I didn't realize this was Derrick Gee or G Derrick 2.0 for TikTok.
Yeah. No, I had an account very early, and then I was like, screw social media, deleted everything. And then when I rejoined, I'm like, damn it, someone else took it.
Yeah, you know, I just noticed that YouTube has announced that you can have handles now, so I quickly scooped the one up because, yeah, totally for that same reason. You don't want to lose out.
Same. Thank you for
Nice.
having me. Thank you for the nice introduction.
Yeah, man. Well, look, it's really great to have you here, and like I said, it was crazy. Like, you know, TikTok is one of those funny places where you don't know what you're gonna get, and eventually the algorithm will show you some things you're interested in. And when I was like, I stumbled across your page, I was like, holy shit, this guy likes all the same stuff I care about. And I thought I was kind of niche, but you know, I don't know. Like, it's the great thing about TikTok, I guess, is it shows you stuff you care about.
Yeah, the word niche is funny because people say like, oh, your stuff is super niche, but also not. And I think that's my mindset has always been like, there's enough people in the world that the stuff that I care about or we care about is not niche, you know? So whether it's hi-fi or like weird samples or stuff like that, there's like people care about this stuff. And I never thought of it as a niche channel of like very small people interested in things. I'm like, I bet a lot of people would be interested in what I talk about. So it's nice that the platform exists to kind of connect people like us.
Absolutely, man. That's the best thing about it is kind of that, I guess, reassuring that yeah, what we like is valid, you know, especially because it can feel niche, right?
Yeah, it can. You think it's all in your head, but there's so many passionate people out there interested in discovering music stories and stuff like that.
Yeah. Now, just to state the obvious, you know, you're based in Australia. You're based in Sydney, is that
Mm,
right?
I am.
And how's everything going in Australia at the moment?
Let me think. Australia's funny. It's like it's always fine, you know. Generally, you know, there's bullshit like anything else, but it's the weather's good. You know, uh, politically things are pretty calm, you know. So yeah, I can't complain. I think I used to live over in the US, and I think um, it's kind of nice to be home. I think considering you can do a lot of your work from your desk to the rest of the world. So yeah, Australia's great.
That's awesome, man. So as you may know, Serato is a New Zealand-based company right next door. So it's kind of nice to have someone from the South Pacific on the chat, you know, for a change, I guess.
Very impressive, a New Zealand company. You know, it's not something you immediately think of.
Yeah, but similarly, actually, and I don't know if you've talked about this, but it was really cool that you know, Australia and New Zealand have both had some really important innovations in technology. Like I think it was the Fairchild synthesizer is an Australian invention. Is that right?
Oh, that I don't know.
I think it is. Yeah, and that was like one of the first sampling synthesizers ever. It was like the
Uh,
computer screen and this keyboard. Maybe we'll have to investigate this one further another time.
wow.
But yeah.
Well, it's like Wi-Fi or something came from Australia, I swear. Or GPS. I think it was GPS, something
Oh,
like
really?
that. And it's just, yeah, it's just like you wouldn't connect that together. But yeah, go Serato, huh?
Well, yeah. Also go Australia because I wanted to ask you real quick. I know you've also been involved in radio, and one of
Mm,
my favorite radio stations from Australia is Triple J.
mm,
And when I was a youth growing up in New Zealand, Aotearoa, we'd get the Triple J Hottest 100 compilation CDs. Might be aging myself here, but but they were always like a really great opportunity to learn about new and exciting music from the world and also Australia. And I feel like that was something that I thought Triple J has always really done, and Australia, as a matter of fact, has always done, really supported their own musicians. Would you agree?
For sure. I think that comes with its pluses and minuses, but for sure. I think that there is no other country that I can think of that has a platform like Triple J where you can go from nobody to somebody really quickly. Where there's this thing called Unearthed, where you can upload tracks there, and it's like a Australian only radio SoundCloud, where it's like
Wow.
people are looking, A&Rs from around the world are looking at it, record labels, Triple J, and if it's good and if you brand it well, you can be on Unearthed Radio, which is a digital station, and then if that does well, it can be on Triple J within a week type thing, and
Holy.
then like national radio, and then you can be on festivals and tours, and you can be signed immediately. And so it's because of the relative size of Australia, I think it's the perfect size to do something like that. In America, it would be like there'd be a song uploaded every millisecond. It'd be so hard to follow. But I think that is a very powerful and special thing. But it does come with its detractions as well, which I think is like, it's the alternative national platform for music. And so like, if they don't deem it appropriate, they've missed a lot of things as well. Like very obvious big artists that are globally international, they kind of missed it. So they kind of can't support it even now because it's like, oh, we didn't find it early and it was too early for our ears. And so that's past now. So it's a weird thing, but I think ultimately it's a tremendous platform.
Who would be a good example of somebody that they missed? Not to put them on blast or anything, but just
I think Hiatus Coyote is a good example.
Yeah.
Where it's like neo soul, definitely slower, groovier than like more of the rock stuff that they're known for, and Grammy nominated, can sell out shows in around America, but can't sell out shows as quickly in Australia. And it's just kind of, they should be the darlings of it, but they're just like not. And like, that's probably the best example I can think of.
That's a really good point, though, because Hiatus Coyote are one of like the most celebrated artists that I can think of from Australia in the U.S. North America, primarily because their sound fits so well into that R&B jazzy. It's such. I mean, their latest album and all the remixes, they're so good. Like I'm really glad you brought that up because I loved that remix album they put out, and the fact they worked with so many cool artists on that remix project as well.
Yeah. I worked with their team a little bit. The team is really great, really passionate, and I think you can get a bit like closed-minded about like what an alternative radio audience wants, and so you can kind of like just miss a few shots. But that's bound to happen with any radio, right? I guess like Radio 1's going to miss some big artists because they just think it's not relevant and it's massive over there or something like that. So, but yeah, they're a very special act that can sell out Brooklyn any day of the week type thing. But Sydney, you're going to have some trouble. Like it's going to be harder. It won't sell as fast, which is crazy.
Yeah, I could see that. That's unfortunate though. People don't know what they're missing out on with Hiatus Coyote. They're like one of the most crazy bands of all time.
So talented.
Yeah, I think about Australia always does so well on the international stage, musically speaking, despite the smaller population. I'm thinking of like some of the most impactful artists of now, Flume, Tame Impala, things like that, and there's even a burgeoning drill scene I've heard, which was quite impressive actually. Is there any notable Australian artists that you think we should be aware of coming out right now?
There's so many. I harp on a lot about K-pop because I find it's a significant part of the music industry that doesn't get talked about enough in the West. I guess it's more exotica, but I think there are tons of Australians in K-pop, and I think that's really fascinating. As like, if you grow up here, they're from the suburbs. Like they're not wealthy, and they apply and they get to these things, and they've got like 20 million followers on Instagram, and they're nobodies here. you know. And I think that's such like a weird thing to me, that like you can have these like kind of whatever Sydney high school kids now like international superstars, but if you name them to anyone here, they'll know like the person that won Australian Idol in 2007 10 times, 100 times over the person that's like big around the world in K-pop. So I think that like, you know, I'm not trying to be like the maddest proponent for it, but I think it's super interesting that like um, the high amount of Aussies in K-pop, and I think it's because proximity
Mm-hmm.
to Asia Pacific, lots of Asians, lots of Koreans in Australia, and they can speak English, which helps in for marketing purposes for those. So I think that's always really interesting to me.
Yeah, I was thrilled to learn actually. My niece is a very big fan of K-pop and specifically Blackpink, and
Yeah.
I was thrilled to learn that two of the members, one of them is from Australia, one of them is from New Zealand. And I was like,
Right.
that's crazy. And then
Yeah.
yeah, and like you said, I think that the musicians that are involved in a lot of the production of K-pop as well are from all parts of the world, which is always really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Once you get so deep into being into music, you end up going full circle from like hating pop and thinking pop is the worst to really appreciating the craft of what pop can deliver in terms of like satisfying music. And the best songwriters are all in K-pop, you know, doing some incredible things. So I marvel at it from a pure like, you know, creative production artistry standpoint as much. Like, do I think it's as great as some of the like Western counterparts? Like, I think it's, you know, it's got a place, but it's very manufactured. But the songwriting can be incredible.
yeah, I think yeah, I know what you mean, but I think it's almost like you can't paint all the K-pop with the brush, right? Like it's nuanced as well, like
Indeed, indeed.
Western music, surely.
Yeah, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, that's really cool though. Now the other thing I wanted to talk about with Triple J is they have this series called Like a Version. You're probably
Mm,
familiar with it.
yeah, yeah.
I've always thought it's so cool. And I wanted to know if do you have any like notable or favorite cover versions that you'd like to share? Not to put you on the spot too much.
Hmm. Hmm. A great question. There's a there's a rap group called 1300. They're like a Sydney Korean Australian rap group, and they do a version of Gangnam Style, which is pretty funny. Um, but I think I've been thinking a lot about like I've wanted to like think about doing a TikTok on like the formula of what makes it like a version successful. And I think that there's like particular markers you need to hit, which I'm still processing. And I think it's about like it's got to be like throwback enough for the widest pool of audience to think that it's like they want to hear that cover. Because if you're being too smart and like too on brand, it's not gonna work. Like I've got a lot. I used to work with her, but I've got a lot of love for Sampa the Great. She did "Damn," which makes sense for her. But Kendrick's, I don't know, "Humble" or whatever, DNA,
Yeah,
makes sense for her. Great rapper, but it's like it almost makes too much sense in hindsight. I wouldn't have known, you know. But then you know, people love hearing like remakes of covers from like when they grew up and like interesting. So and like people that are much smaller than Sampa can have much more success on like a version because you're doing like Blink 182 or you're doing Rage Against the Machine, you know, the famous Denzel Curry one.
oh yeah,
I
that's
thought
right.
and I think it's also like how seriously you take it and how like much energy you put into it. And I think it's also about like, you know, whether you are taking the piss, like whether you're just making fun of
Hmm.
it, or if you're like really, you know, respecting what it is, or you know, there's so many factors. But I think that there's like I think there's a science behind it, you know. And but I think that at its core, some people try to be too crazy with it and conceptual, where people are kind of want to just be basic and click on like, oh, I loved, you know, this big Goo Goo Dolls song or something like that, and it's sung incredibly, really well, and it will do well. You know, it's
Yeah,
the method.
yeah. I think that's a really good point. I love talking about cover versions. I've got a friend of mine, Nina Mendoza, who always pulls out the craziest cover versions, and I always think like what an opportunity a cover version is to do, is to kind of make it your own, right? And that's, do you think that's the challenge of a good cover version, of like being able to not like just do it verbatim and then kind of recontextualize it and almost create a like a version of it that is yours?
It depends on your size and scale and impact and reach, you know? Like Denzel Curry taking Rage Against the Machine's Killing in the Name of dead serious and performing it by the book was incredible, because you'd never seen it before and was totally different to what he does, and he's famous anyway.
Yeah.
So if he did a jazz cover of it, it's going to be like, what the fuck, you know?
Right.
Whereas, you know, I think if you're smaller, you've kind of got less to lose. But then I think that those people, I've seen like Hotline Bling, let's do a like quirky version of Hotline Bling that kind of no one asked for and no one's heard of you. So it's like you're better off taking a really classic song that everyone's forgotten about and doing it really well, and people going like, wow, this person did it perfectly and so amazing. So I don't know. I think cover versions done right can really change a lot for an artist in terms of turning you onto a whole new audience. But I also know that like Spotify used to do it on their YouTube, and you have massive artists and it'll get like 100 views because like it just it doesn't connect. I look at all of these things and kind of like think about why they don't work and why they do work. I think ultimately the Denzel one is a good example of like, he chose a song that like is like almost in line with who he is as a person and in his soul, and possibly the answer is like finding that song that is like completely different to you but like completely in line with who you are as an individual. And that's when it works the most, rather than trying to be too clever about like, you know, what is a remix that no one's ever heard before.
I love that. I really like that. And I'm thinking of like, now that we're talking about it, I'm just thinking of like songs that are crazy that I just knew before I even realized they were a cover song. You know, like Soft Cell, Tainted Love. Like I didn't even know that was a song before, you know, like I didn't know that was a soul song, you know?
Yes, that's true. And there's a whole like, I know there's series on TikTok of stuff of like cover songs that you didn't know were covers type things, like that famous Nelly Imbruglia song or whatever. It was a cover, or you know,
Which
many examples of that.
Hang on. That seems we got to touch on that for a moment, because Natalie Imbruglia, definitely high school crush for, you know, South Pacific boy.
Many.
Yeah. Which song was the cover? Do you recall?
I'm gonna find out for you because of the powers of the internet. Torn,
Okay.
her big song
Oh, okay.
was a cover. Danish song written for Danish singer Liz Sorensen.
Oh, wow.
And recorded by rock band Edna Swap. But her song Torn is a cover. And that was, you know, short hair in the apartment, things moving behind the scenes. You think
Big
that was
tune.
her song.
Big tune. Yeah, Torn. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, that was the one for sure.
Yeah.
Crazy. That was
Yeah.
really, that's perfect. Like we've kind of covered it all there. We've got Aussie content, classic cover version that you didn't know. That was really good. I can't believe you pulled it
Well,
off.
like, on that, I was talking about it yesterday with someone, because this is like super niche, but like, I posted a video last week about J Electronica sampling Ryuichi Sakamoto, a track that Ryuichi recorded for Babel, the film. And that song was also sampled by Trey Songz and Mr. Hudson, and like coincidentally at the same time with this same piano song. But then that song that was from Babel there's an original song by Ryuichi Sakamoto from '97, which is like a pop song. So it's like, it's sometimes there's almost a series in like where the cover, Ryuichi covered his own song, is better than the original. And like there's like, yeah, there's the kind of series of, did you know this was a cover? But then there's also like ones that made it 10 times better, which is its own craft, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's two components to this now, that since we're on the subject. First of all, I feel like I can't believe I missed this until now because of your interview with Mr. Hudson. But there is a fantastic cover of Paranoid, which is, I think he wrote that for what's it called? He wrote that for Kanye West, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a Japanese girl pop group called the Susan. Have you heard this before?
Susan, no.
Okay, so this is pretty old. I'm just gonna have to skip some ads here. Excuse me for a moment. But this band called the Susan, had a release I think on Fool's Gold back in the day, or Scion. It was one of these back in 2008 when they did cool stuff like that, where they had Scion money to burn. Anyways, this was Bloghouse, peak Bloghouse. You can tell by the outfits. Let's have a look here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So this is their cover of the Mr. Hudson penned song Paranoid, which I'll play a snippet of if you're okay with that.
Go on. Let's go. Yeah.
11 years ago.
Wow.
It's really good, hey? Probably should cut that short there because just gotta be respectful of all that stuff. But yeah, the Susan, incredible band. If you like ESG, you'll love the Susan.
True. It's very ESG-ish, except Japanese and full of like traditional Japanese instruments. Love that.
Yeah.
My favorite, not to like give in too much light at the moment, but my favorite Kanye West album.
Oh, is that 808s and Heartbreaks, right? Yeah.
808s, yeah.
Revolutionary, crazy time, that one.
Exactly. It's like the music fans' choice.
Yeah, and the packaging. Oh my gosh, that was like like I never got the vinyl. It was a bit too rich for my blood at the time. But holy smokes, the packaging on that with was it Cause? Yeah,
Didn't have Cause. Yeah, exactly.
Man.
Wow.
Okay, one more thing on cover versions. And Love Lisa brought it up. Shout out Love Lisa. Thank you for modding the chat. What up, Kid Koo? We got the squad tuned in. Burnt CDs, I see them in there. But Love Lisa brought up how much she likes reggae covers, and I'm a big fan of reggae covers also. And I think if I could offer anything to anybody listening or yourself, Derrick, there is a fantastic compilation called For the Love of You.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with this?
Yeah.
So good, right?
Amazing.
Yeah. The Gap Band L. Charles outstanding cover is Insanity, and the Christine Lewin Juicy Fruit cover, mind-blowing.
There's a lot of gems, especially on that record. I've been listening to the second one. That's the first one.
Oh
right?
yeah, part 2. I haven't heard this one.
I think there's multiple, but yeah, definitely well worth the time.
Is there anything off this one that you'd recommend?
I'm terrible with things off the top of my head, but You Might Need Somebody. Sylvia Teller.
Oh, okay, that one. Yep. Okay, I'm gonna again listen to this a little bit later. But thank you. I'm only just learning there was volume 2 because this was one of my go-tos. Like this was kind of like, oh, do you like reggae? Oh, do you know this kind of thing?
Oh yeah. Keep that in your back pocket.
Yeah, right. Highly recommend. All right, so just if we can rewind a bit, you talked a little bit earlier about how you lived in the US for a while, and you also lived in London as well as Sydney, where you're at right now. I'm really curious to get some of your observations of the difference in music culture in those cities, if you may.
Ooh, so many thoughts. Where are you based again?
I'm broadcasting from Vancouver, British Columbia. I'm with Nardwar and the Rascals, Michael Bublé.
Nardwar, the man, the guy.
One can
He needs to
aspire.
be like, there needs to be a Hall of Fame and Music Hall of Fame, and he should be in it for sure. Um, I think a lot about it, and I think the experiences I had were, very specific, and it's easy to generalize, but I think that um, London is the hub, and I think for me, I think that the problem in quotes, is that because everyone loves music so much that they don't want, like, they're very proud of it not going mainstream and not going commercial. Obviously, there's commercial acts in the UK, Adele, Ed Sheeran, and stuff like that. But I think that's a lot more like, this is our culture and this is our stuff. And a lot of artists don't want to sell out. And I think that's very much in their DNA. But because of that, it's like, because London is central and kind of like, sure, lower down in the UK, but like from all sides, people come into this one hub. You've got so many like thriving scenes happening simultaneously. Um, grime or drill, or techno, or new jazz, or you've got minimal piano concerts happening over there, and you've got all this like Afro beats, and you know there's enough people and there's enough cultural diversity all mushed together in one place. And because radio is still a significant thing, because everyone can kind of everyone's a DJ, which I found the weirdest experience that I had, which is like, everyone has a USB on them ready to jump on, even though no one is asking them to. Everyone's ready to throw in their USB and go, I'm ready. um, and my physio, when I hurt my neck, oh yeah, I'm a DJ, and then you go over here, you go over to some other, like, you go to the bike shop, I'm a DJ. And it's just, there is a ingrained sense of like collection, curation, radio history, that is ingrained, which I find, like, which is why I find it the hub for me, because it's like, people just know quite a lot about music quite deeply. I'm generalizing, but a lot of people I experienced, it just surprised me how much people knew and how deep their record collections were. And I think it's by nature of the fact that London is centralized and it's so diverse, whereas Australia and America, it is kind of similar because the countries are so huge that you do have different subcultures, but they're in different cities and states, and they're never mushed together in the same way, and they never kind of like cross over in that same way. So you don't have those. Ed Sheeran was homies with Wiley and Dizzy Rascal and stuff like that, which is like, what, but
That's cool.
you couldn't have that here, like here or in the US as much, and I found like you could fall into so many different music scenes in London really easily, whereas New York I found harder to kind of grasp the culture, especially because it's like very money driven. And it felt like, obviously there's lots going on in Brooklyn, but it just felt like a bit more detached and a bit more insular. And I guess, like, there's lots of scenes around America, and obviously lots of stuff has come out from different states
Yeah, regional.
at different times, yeah, whether it's Seattle or Atlanta or things like that. But I feel like it's so spread out that you can't just like dive in as quickly into scenes, because it's like, even though New York is huge, it's like micro scenes, whereas like perhaps in Atlanta you can have a massive scene because everyone's doing the same thing and moving together and going to the same places. And then Sydney is like, the population isn't big enough, and the culture is still developing, and I don't think the arts is as valued in every city. And so it's like, it's funny coming back, returning, and people talking about scenes, because like an Afrobeat scene is like a party that happens once a month, which is not valid, but it's like completely different to an Afrobeat scene in London.
Yeah.
So I think the interesting thing about Australia, what you said earlier about like punching above our weight, I think there's so many talented people in Australia, because we aspire to the rest of the world. We kind of want to be part of it, so we kind of we obsess over it, because we just feel like no one cares here. And there's so many Australian artists that, like, whether it's in the EDM scene or in the techno scene or in the in K-pop or whatever, there's people looking to the world going like, I want to be that. And I think that it produces more than a lot of countries because of that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, man. It's funny because you're the second person that we've had on here who talked about London in that way, where radio and the appreciation of music is so deep and so vast, in the
Mm.
city, which is, I think, I really understand that in a lot of ways. It feels like here, or even when I travel to a lot in Los Angeles sometimes, it's like you said, there's scenes, and those scenes are supported by a population that's big enough to maintain and make them lucrative and sustainable, I guess.
Mm.
But it's almost like you've got to find that, that circle. It's kind of like TikTok, really. Like you've got to figure, let it tell you, and then kind of latch on, and then just keep going back to those things, so you feel like that's your reality in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you're in a smaller country, and I mean, I can relate. Being in New Zealand was very much that. Like, the most important, hip hop scene was a cafe on, downtown Auckland, and it only had a capacity of like 40 people. So it was like,
Yeah.
that was
It's
ground
not a
zero.
scene.
No, exactly.
But yeah, no, and I think it's like the what I said about like these kind of melding of scenes as well, because you're kind of falling over each other, and like why James Blake is like making like dubstep but also crooning and playing piano. It's like because you're just mixing with so many different types and you're able to, is like a nature of that city. Whereas like Sydney or you know Vancouver, it's like yeah, it there's pockets of people, but there's not like huge like spilling into one another. Like you'll have a drill gig right next to like a punk gig type thing,
Yeah.
like yeah,
I think that's also interesting. Like it's an interesting, like, something to meditate on. Is like, how do you develop a scene and make it sustainable? How does, like, I mean, obviously London, New York, Los Angeles,
mm,
Paris, Berlin,
mm,
Tokyo. Like, these are destinations for music and musicians to go to become successful. Korea, South
yeah,
Korea.
yeah,
And people will gravitate and travel and invest their whole life going there for music, whereas
yeah,
often those people are coming from places like Vancouver or Sydney or Auckland, New Zealand.
yeah.
To
There's been a lot of studies on it, I think, and I think the simple answer is a lot of free spaces for young creatives, which sounds very I'm gonna I don't want to politicize, but very left, right? It's like just give spaces to artists. It's like, and I'm sure a lot of people would be like, well, all well and good, but it costs money and all this sort of stuff, and it does. But they just, you know, 18-year-old people, kids are putting on underground raves under highways because they love music, and if they can do that safer, and if they can invite people, more people can know about it. It just that creates culture. It's not as much as I have a taste and have a following. I don't know if I'm creating culture. Like, as in, like, if I just put on a party here and around the world, that's different from someone that's like in it and all of their friends are in it and all of their friends are DJs and all of their or like one's a keyboardist, one's a techno DJ, and they kind of have a space to just put on something weird, and they're all young and they're all just being messy, and usually incredible things come out of that. Like whether that happened in Manchester in the 70s and 80s and that sort of thing. It's like, but that takes a lot of love and respect for culture and music and foresight and like knowledge that you're not going to get any return on it until maybe a lot later. Now people go to Manchester as like one of the meccas of music, and I'm sure you've had a lot of return financially from a like state and city council point of view, but you're not going to get it back probably possibly in your lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. Both New Zealand and Canada, and I imagine Australia too, have government agencies that invest purely to develop artists and music culture. It's like literally a priority of the government, and even those fall short. And a lot of it does come to what you just touched on, like space. And I think about when we had Zach on, this producer who lived in London, he was talking a lot about the rave scene and how the rave scene in London is very different from the US and other parts of the world,
Yes.
because the rave scene was built in defunct warehouses and abandoned buildings and, like you said, under a bridge and very unconventional spaces that and fields and stuff that were kind of totally illegal. And
Yeah.
because of that, I was almost like, yeah, like you're probably not making a lot of money. You've got the high risk of potentially going to jail for having a party. So you really got to be committed to it for the love
Totally.
of music, which is quite amazing.
That's it. And governments at the end of the day, they don't really get that. They never went to those things. I don't really understand that. And I think I do think someone like myself and yourself is our responsibility to educate people younger and older than us about the importance of like the long-term impacts of nurturing culture. And I think and talk a lot about like musical significance and the significance on impact on different cultures and youth. And I think most people in governments have probably a very surface level passion about music, and so they just think that it comes from record labels and that's it. So and I think it's a lot of reason why like a lot of genres and scenes have come out of places like London, whereas like I can't think of one genre that's come out of Sydney. Like a literal someone's created some new thing. We are mostly like looking at other places to create that for us type thing. So yeah, it's all and say I was going to say let's all move to London, but I think it's a hard city to live in too. So
Yeah.
and everyone knows that.
I wanted to give a quick shout out to some people in the chat. We got Hits Danny in here, Random Play, aka Matt, dropped in that the David Byrne book has a great section on creating a scene. I've got to read that book.
I do need to read that too.
It's been on the wish list. I know my dad's got it, so I'll try and sneak that one from him. But yeah, Burnt CDs. We got Sticky Hands. We got Timber Music. Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, thank you to everyone who's tuned in right now. Yeah. So also, I feel like this is maybe a bit of a personal thing, but since we're talking about Australian artists, I saw that it was Tame Impala's their album Lonerism's 10-year anniversary the other day, and I had to give it a bump.
Jeez.
Obviously, such an important artist from Australia. Maybe one of the biggest right now?
Probably. Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, unless I'm missing someone, I'd say so.
Yeah, maybe Flume or something. But I was going to say, have you heard of his other band, Pond?
Is that him or is that another artist from
Perth?
Tame?
Well, I know he's involved in it somehow.
As in like another artist, like the bass player from Tame. A while ago, but I haven't listened to them recently. Yeah.
Yeah, they have a really great song called "Sweep Me Off My Feet," and I'm gonna put it in the Discord. We won't play it right now because I'm sure that will get us banned. Yeah, it's really cool. Like speaking of scenes, like even that somewhere like Perth, because of someone like Tame Impala has brought attention, and I'd even similarly say like in Canada, in Montreal, somebody like Kate Renata brought a lot of attention to the city, and then people were talking about like a sound. So would you describe? I mean, I know you said there's maybe not a Sydney sound, but would you say there's maybe a Perth sound or any kind of?
There's a hardcore. I think they're from. Is Parkway Drive from, or is that? Am I thinking the wrong thing? Hardcore acts from Perth. I'm not having been to Perth because it's so far away.
Yeah, true. It's so far.
It's like flying New York to LA, but for like not the comparative version of that. I don't know of a Perth sound, I think, to be honest, but I think, I don't know. I still haven't reconciled my thoughts on Tame Impala. I really like Tame Impala. I think I really respect Kevin Parker. I also wonder about the lasting impact, or like, I think what I love about it is it's so nostalgic but new, but it is very nostalgic. It's very Lennon-esque, it's very Pink Floyd-esque, among other things. And I don't know, I guess recently I'm kind of thinking to myself, I don't know why I'm not as big of a fan as I should be, if that makes sense, because I really liked Lonerism
It's
and
great.
Inner
Yeah.
Speaker, you know, but emotionally, I went to see them at the Enmore Theatre years and years ago, and Kevin didn't really speak to the audience, and it sounded like the CD. That shows how old I am. Um,
It's all
and to
good.
me, that was kind of a strange experience to be like, oh, I didn't feel a whole lot from that gig. It just sounded like it should have, and maybe that's a disconnect from me. Like I am very much like a soul, soul music, jazz type person, as well as other things. But like I think that I'm like now like thinking out loud.
Let's
Perhaps
go
it's
for it.
like missing the soul, not our soul, the soul for me. And I think he's an incredible songwriter, and his melodies are so beautiful. But I think I can't. I'm not like my heart doesn't flutter that often to it. I don't know. Now I'm just rambling.
No, no, no. I think that's very valid. And I've read a very similar review of him playing at Coachella, and they were like, this is like so mediocre. And I think a lot of it might come down to the fact that he's like a studio musician, and I say
Mm,
that without being. I don't want to say any disrespect to that, because I think that is definitely like an art. I mean, even the Beatles, right? I mean, here we go, going down the old Beatles, you know, path.
it
But
always comes back to the Beatles.
well, especially with someone like him. But like a lot of his
Yeah.
music is made in the studio with the studio in mind. This very hi-fi, or everything is very considered, and maybe that doesn't translate. Maybe he's just not a good live performer. I think that even with someone like Vicky Farewell, who we had on the show a while back, we talked about how live performance is the most vulnerable you'll be, and
Yeah.
that's not for everybody, especially if you
No.
have to use your voice, and if especially musicians like or DJs. A lot of us like to hide behind our
Mm.
instruments, and when put on the front, it's like paralyzing for some of us.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I think that he puts on a spectacle. I'm sure nowadays the show would be amazing, and it's all I've seen like big screens and light shows and stuff like that. But I think I like mess. I like things that
Yeah,
like aren't perfect. I like experimentation. I like rawness and a bit of like human. And I think perhaps what it is like Tame Impala is almost too perfect. It's like it's so good that sometimes I kind of wish it wasn't as as good. You know, the packaging is perfect. Everything is like you don't miss. He doesn't miss. But in that way, it's like I like the imperfections of that. So but that's all with like I think he's incredible, and obviously he's like hugely influential and has been in every session with every main artist, major artist of the last decade. So like he's not worried.
no, no, no. And it's funny though that you say that too, because I think a lot of like a band that encompassed the imperfections, and in our lifetime, or the last 20 years, was
Mm,
like the Strokes. And I read
mm,
the Wikipedia on the Strokes album, and I come back to this. I probably even hope. I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself to the audience that listens to this podcast, but I know that they specifically recorded "Is This It" with like the cheapest like PV
mm.
amplifiers, and they didn't do any like multi-tracking. It was like all live, and
Great.
that was specifically because when they wanted to perform live, they wanted to sound like the record, but
Amazing.
they kind of wanted to capture that kind of like just rough and rugged, rough around the edges.
I like that.
Yeah,
I've felt 1,000 more things with that record than I have with any Tame Impala record. You know, and it's not perfect, and the songwriting and the structures aren't as great, but there's something about it, you know.
yeah,
But hey, like it's really interesting to see like currents from Tame Impala being like adopted by like Gen Z, as one of the greatest albums ever. And that's cool. I think the cover's really cool. I think that there's great songs on it. But yeah, it's really interesting to be like, that's the one that I see more often than anything else on TikTok. Is like not Lonerism, not Inner Speaker. It's Currents,
yeah. That's the
which
jam.
kind of, yeah, which speaks to a new generation taking, you know, what wouldn't have been considered their best work now their best work. And hey, you know, at the end of the day, I'm just a guy getting older talking about back in the day, aren't I?
Well, it's funny. I remember when that record came out. I want to give a quick shout out to my friend Scratch Bastard. He played me the song, not the less I know the better, the one that Rihanna covered. And
Yeah.
he played that to me. He's like, "This is hip hop. Like, listen to these drums. This is hip hop." And it's funny because that record I feel is the one that really bridged Tame Impala to like the hip hop community, and people were like, "Oh, this guy's dope," you know. And then he got tracks with Travis Scott and these, you know, whoever.
Yeah. There was footage of Rihanna singing that track at like the Grammys or something like that as Tame was performing, something like that. I think that was one of those moments where it's like, you know, the queen, one of the queens is like fucks with this. So it's like, okay, it must be good, you know?
Yeah. Also, want to give a quick shout out to Arlo Soriano and So It's Sue. I think that's how you say the username. Arlo's chillin'. And speaking of chilling, I wanted to quickly touch on something that I really enjoy about your content, with a very deep relativity and passion. Is that, you know, before, like even personally before I got on the call, I was really enjoying a very tasty pumpkin tea cake which is a recipe from the bakery Tartine with an Earl Grey
Oh yeah.
tea. And in a lot of
Lovely.
videos, you're a fellow cake and tea connoisseur. What's been on your menu lately, Derek?
Baklava, a lot of like sweets from the, you know, Lebanese sweets and things like that. Too many actually. I don't think my skin appreciates it, but I don't know, man. It's funny, like for anyone that doesn't know, like it's not a format that I do often, but like I've done a few videos where I'm like drinking coffee and eating cake and talking about like these in-ears that I'm wearing, or these headphones and stuff, and kind of speaks to who I am. Like I needed to film a content about these earphones that I was given, and I had some coffee and cake with me, and I thought, I don't know, let's just record it and see, and I'll unbox it and talk about it, and people really liked it. I think because I've always dreamed of being a tech reviewer. Like in another world, I would have been an MKBHD like phone reviewer. I'm a nerd, and that's not my path now. But I think what people liked is it's kind of a review, but it's also a guy eating and talking, and like it kind of is perfect for TikTok, right? It feels like you said at the beginning, it's like your friend. This wasn't intentional, but it's like your friend just chatting, and he cares, but he kind of doesn't care. And it's like, it wasn't the intention, but it was cool to see that it's like that was kind of the truth. I put my camera on, press record. I was eating the cake because I liked the cake, but then I also wanted to open this thing that I was also excited by. And you know, 0.1% of the viewers, people would say like, dude, stop eating. Why? I don't care about the cake. But it's like, that's almost the point. That's almost what makes it interesting, and more interesting than anyone just going like shooting really nice shots of headphones and like unboxings and just like these hands that come into frame. It's like, I care as much about eating my cake as I do about this equipment, because this cake's delicious and people love it, and it's been really cool. So, you know, now I kind of save those moments and those cakes for like if I have a if I have a reason to talk, but they seem to work whenever I do it.
Yeah, man. You know, there's a whole section of Twitch dedicated to eating, and I believe the name for it, I'm probably not saying it right, is mukbang. Maybe
Yeah.
someone can say it in the chat. But yeah, there's a whole like part of Twitch, which, you know, I mean, outside of the hi-fi reviews, you know, it could be a potentially lucrative career for you on Twitch as well, if you're interested.
Just eating,
Yeah,
just
just eating
eating and
cake.
talking.
And I honestly like please continue, because I'm curious to know more about, you know, the cakes and pastries that you are choosing, because I'm curious to try and taste these things as well. Like, you know, it's something everyone can relate to food, right?
I think that's the thing. It's like I'm not. In some ways, no one said this, but it's like in some ways I'm kind of breaking the rules of like what you're meant to do when you review something, which is like, it's not a mukbang, but I'm like, but I just, everyone sits, you know, afternoon tea, you sit down and you you have a little snack and a thing, and why can't I talk about tech at the same time? So it's like, but no, it has to be like all structured and this and that, and it's like, no, it's just, I don't know, it's whatever. um and yeah, noted. Next time I'll make sure. What have I had? I've had banana bread, and I've had some sort of like lemon drizzle. All cakes are good. All cakes are good.
Yeah, there was one that looked particularly tasty. It was a kind of a loaf, and it was a pale, creamy color with a nice outside. It was very thick slice. I was very
Yeah.
impressed by the width of it.
How embarrassing.
I mean, you can read into it if you guys want, but like really, the best conversations happen over coffee and tea, or tea and coffee and cake and stuff.
Exactly. It's real. I saw a comment about testing the mic on the AirPod Pro Maxes by eating directly into the mic. Like I would, like if I'm never gonna buy those AirPods because they're expensive, but if I was given them, I would totally do that. Like I would just set up and be like, are these any good, and how do they sound, and I might get like, what cake would I want to eat with it? I'm like a butter cake type person, so like, you know, yeah, you're either like a chocolate cake person or a butter cake person. I'm definitely that, but I guess I'm more on the lighter side of things.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting point though, because some people prefer a denser cake, and some prefer a lighter, fluffier cake, and
Yeah.
I'm curious to know which side do you sit on? You dense cake, fluffy cake?
No, fluffy, like give me a sponge cake, give me something with fruit in it, like. But that's like, I think that very very much sums up who I am. I'm definitely like light and optimistic, and I'm definitely not someone that wants anything too heavy. But I could have a lemon drizzle cake every day of the week.
Well, we have if you come to Vancouver, and I do hope that you do, there is a very nice dense citrus
Oh,
olive oil cake, and
oh,
we
olive
yeah,
oil cakes are great.
it's fantastic. It's like very moist, and has they actually put like peppercorns on it.
Oh,
It sounds like it would be terrible. Like, in fact, I went to the cafe and they were like, "You got to try this cake. You're gonna love it," because they have a carrot cake which is delicious also.
yeah.
And I was like, "What is it?" And they're like, "It's a citrus olive oil cake with black peppercorn." I was like, "Hell no, that sounds
That
disgusting."
sounds like, yeah, a savory meal.
Yeah, but truth be told, it was one of the most delicious things. And now I go back on the weekly basis to this cafe for this cake. So
This is why I joined the Serato podcast to talk about cake. I like that.
yeah, man. I'm glad. I'm glad. And I feel like we can get serious about the music, but we should have some variety and you
Hell yeah,
know get in the cake chat.
I'm here for it.
I mean, we have a series called Serato's Kitchen, not to be too literal plugging Serato stuff, but for beat makers, and the parallels between cooking and music production are just unlimited.
There's like so many analogies, right? Chopping and slicing and dicing and all that sort of stuff,
It's all there, man.
especially in the Serato world.
Yeah, exactly. And DJs too. I think a lot of very good DJ sets have correspond to putting together a good meal with timing and what spices and herbs and seasoning you put in at certain times.
Yeah.
Which does lead me to the next question quite well, actually.
Mm,
You've had several shows on radio stations like NTS, SiriusXM, etc.
mm,
I'd like to
mm.
know, how would you describe your shows?
I would describe them as everything that's not like, um, they're definitely more relaxed and definitely more. I like them to. I like to make surprising connections between genres and sounds. I'm definitely not a club. Like I've been toying with the idea about whether I am a DJ, because like I'm not. I not and have never been a club DJ that plays bangers. As much as I love those things, but there's not really places for someone that plays like down tempo, like, well, not many places, but like, if you play Smokey Robinson or like really slow future tracks, it's like you're a DJ, but you're like what they say, like a selector or a tastemaker. Like people aren't flocking to see you in the same setting, but you do DJ, if that makes sense. Like making those connections. So, um, at its most basic, and what like people enjoyed about my show was that, like, yeah, it was like Neil Young into future. because it was like I do find that there is a spiritual connection there, and not to overthink it. It's about like these two go together, and there's nothing better than like I do it on my TikTok. I do live streams. There's nothing better than like blowing someone's mind by like going from that track into that other track and being like, what the hell? That worked. That shouldn't have worked, but it does work. And it's like it's all music, and it doesn't, like, to me, I'm not a genre person. I don't think about things like that. I just think about like, oh, it would work with this, that. And I think I'm not trying to switch it up every single time, but I think I'm actually a really bad DJ, because when I have DJ'd and when I go back to back with someone, every second song I want to completely change the genre, because I'm like, ooh, you know what goes with this? Bollywood. So then I go, like, I play a Bollywood song, and the other person's like, what am I meant to do with this? Like,
Yeah, that sounds
but
like a nightmare for me.
yeah, but I really love like surprising people with connections that they would never have thought of before, but still be into it. I've DJ'd where it's like I've played like Korean trap, and people have never heard it, and people don't know what they're saying, but it kind of went with something else, and people were really into it. But it makes it harder if you're definitely going back to back. But I think it's that's what I love. I love being able to like surprise people and surprise myself with how interconnected music is from all around the world.
Yeah, I listened to one of your NTS shows, and it started off with like a Chick Corea jazz song, and then it went into a Shekwez album cut that I didn't know. And I was like, this is really cool. Like, I don't know this song at all, and this is really, well, I didn't know either songs. And, anytime that happens, I'm always like kind of stoked, especially if it's good and I like it. But
Yeah.
it's just, it just sounds like it's coming from more of a place of just music appreciation. And I think, like, I mean, I don't know if you've been to the Tokyo JB Hi-Fi bar.
I haven't.
Oh man, highly recommend it. But it's an environment where I feel like that kind of approach to music is really celebrated. And in fact, there's one in a similar style in Highland Park in Los Angeles, which is opened up by Peanut Butter Wolf of Stone's Throw Records. And I had the opportunity to play there, and they actually have a rule where they're like, do not try and kill it. If you do that, that is the opposite of the goal here. Like, please you can't bring your own records. You can't bring a computer or any kind. They don't have CDJs or anything like that. You are only able to use the records that are on the shelf
Oh,
at the
amazing.
bar.
Fun.
Yeah,
A challenge.
yeah. And it's just, let's listen to records, man. Like, let's listen to music and appreciate it. And it's not about starting a dance floor. It's about having a drink and conversation and enjoying
Yeah.
it for what it is.
Interesting. I've tried to like, I think one of the missions that I've kind of realized with my TikTok is I've tried to like nurture the idea of appreciating music. All of my, like, the high majority of my audience is younger than me. And I want to, the problem is like appreciation of music and listening to music the way I do often trends very quickly towards audiophile and very quickly towards like really snobby, like, oh, you've got to listen to it with your eyes closed and the lights off type vibe. And it's just, I think it's changing. I think it's developing where, like, especially with maybe with the pandemic as well, like people like very like, listening on their own and appreciating something, but it doesn't need to be like you go to a hi-fi bar and everyone has to be quiet. And like,
Yeah.
I don't think there are places where, like, to use a very, very broad basic example, why can't you listen to a deep cut from a Frank Ocean record really loud in a space with friends? Because there's no place for that, because it's like you're either going to a club or where else do you hear that? I don't know, And it's like, so in those hi-fi bars, it's like, okay, you've got to, like, I always wanted to play at this place in London called Brilliant Corners, but they only had record players. And I'm like, but like, I don't have that many records, and I want to play as much Sun Ra as I do Frank Ocean. And I think people would want to hear that, but I don't have records, and it's not. So there's still a ways to go, because I think it's not about the format that you play on. It's about like, what are you playing, and where can you play it? And that place they have like Japanese food, then they clear the tables and people dance, and it's like that's my kind of thing where it's like you can chat and listen to good music, but you can kind of shout over the top of it, and you can eat some food and then maybe have a little boogie afterwards. But it's like I think that's still maturing as an idea of like loving all music without having to be a rave, you know?
Yeah, I'm really glad you say that. And well, there's two parts to this. Twitch has been a great place for me for that. And there's shout out to Arlo and Mineral Ice and the people that in the chat right now that are from the Good Music Twitch family, where there's DJing and people are DJing and there is some technical aspect to it, but a lot of it is just music appreciation. There's like a lady called Special Says who just does kind of like introduction of new artists and new music from her area that just it doesn't matter, like there's no dance floor, so it's purely just music appreciation and however you want to present it. That kind of family just really celebrates that, and I love that. And I love that, because it's streaming, there's no dance floor and there's no expectation. And if people don't want to listen to it, well, they just don't. It's like radio in that way.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
yeah.
There's there's a lot of like, Amazon has a new radio platform and stuff, and I think Twitch is the new radio platform, or live streaming. It's just about like connecting people. There's a chat, you can play things, you can react to things, you can talk to things. Like I like in-person things too, but like I think that that's why I need to get on here.
Well, I think also what you're doing on TikTok is that too, though. And shout out to Ricky Rock. I think I'm saying that right. Could be Reich Rock, but the best part of TikTok lives in the cool music that I find about. And I would say the same thing. And yeah, your channel, Derrick, or on TikTok was one of those ones. I remember you posted a really great story about Madonna demos and the guy that wrote them and how he was in this band, and I forget his name, apologies, but that was like the coolest shit. Like I was just like, holy smokes, this is what it's all about for me. Like I love that. So thank you.
Oh, and the people like tag me saying they bought the bootleg, and I think it's like in my iTunes, I've got all these like random, as I'm sure you do, random MP3s that I love. Sometimes I play out, I put on a radio show and then that's it. And I'm just like, it's like the secret sauce, like this early Madonna, really danceable tune before she was anyone. And I was like, that's why I do my TikToks. I'm like, I listened to it one day. I'm like, yeah, I should tell people about this because this is cool. And sometimes they go viral, sometimes they don't. But it's like, yes, bootlegs of early Madonna stuff is like, you don't find that online, and there's someone needs to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm so glad you do. And it's funny, actually. Hope you don't mind me just going on a bit of a tangent back to the cover version song. But one of those MP3s that lives in my library, a little small collection of it that I scoured from a blog somewhere, was the discovery that Blondie's "Hanging on the Telephone" was a cover version also.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and the band is incredible. That the original band. Oh man, it's not coming to mind right now. But it's the Nerves. The Nerves. I'm pretty sure it's the Nerves.
The Nerves. Okay.
And they're like beautiful garage rock from San Francisco, and they have all these recordings that they just recorded like in their kitchen. Let me just see if I can pull up.
Wow.
Yeah, the pop trio.
See, these are the rabbit holes that I go down.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the Nerves. Just it's easy to find. The Nerves. Thank you, Kid Koo. The Nerves, Hanging on the Telephone, original 45, 1976. So it wasn't even that much later, and they were from Los Angeles. Their song.
Wow.
Their whole EP, that whole EP that they did is top garage rock.
Wow. Never heard of them, which is a shame, I guess, considering.
Hey, man.
Blondie.
Least I can do for all of the things you've put me onto.
I'll have a listen for sure.
Yeah. But so, we're similarly though, where are you finding most of your music these days?
See, I'm behind. Like, if I go live, people are like, what did you think of the Kendrick album? What did you think of the Björk album? All that sort of stuff. It's like, I think the way that I've always treated music is I'm not in any rush because it's out. Doesn't mean I need to have a reaction and a listen straight away because it's out and it's going to be out for the rest of my life. So it's like, you know, um, I think I'm not like of that type that I need to like play it as soon as it comes out and have an opinion on it. I think I still like to find music that connects with people's stories. Like I still love reading interviews with people and they talk about what really influenced them. I really like seeing. I don't know. I I find I connect more with music when I get a bit of context behind it, rather than so like radio shows, DJ sets. Sure, that's a very easy place, but I think that like I always scour and read lots of different articles and things and artists like random artists playlists on Spotify that like no one listens to, but that's they want to express their taste. I kind of like digging into those because it's more like all the story behind the story type thing, and I feel like I'm inside their head. So like for example, like I don't know if it's just still up, but like a year or so ago, I was really into Rosalia's
Oh yeah.
Spanish music playlist, because of what she grew up on. And I'm like, okay, there's an in here, which is not just I'm listening to anything like Spotify's Spanish music playlist. This is like her favorite songs that influence who she, and you hear it and you're like, oh, wow, I hear it, So then those songs become the songs that like I really deeply mess with because it's so much deeper than like beast mode, the playlist or whatever. There's an inbuilt story and a history like woven into the songs just by the fact that she curated it. So I think that's where I find a lot of music that I love.
That's awesome because it does dovetail quite nicely into the fact that you have some incredible playlists on your website, derrickgee.com. That's G with two G's.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, like you've got the what's the one that I thought was really cool? Of course, Frank has a whirly, which is a playlist dedicated to the fact that Frank Ocean has a Wurlitzer,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is so cool. Thank you
yeah.
for making that.
Oh, you enjoyed it?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the kind of shit I love, man. Like, I like Wurlitzers and I like Frank Ocean, and I want to know more. you
Well,
know?
I've always, and I mean that quite sincerely, like for probably a decade, wanted to make a playlist of all my favorite songs that have a Fender Rhodes in it. But I just realized it takes so much time because you can't Google. You can Google it, but you can't Google your favorite songs that have Rhodes in it. So it would take me to go through my entire collection, listen to it, and put them in a playlist.
But
So I've never done it.
but
A- And then
sorry.
I saw this Frank Ocean image, and I was like, oh, I thought it was a Rhodes at the time, and then I looked at it was a Wurlitzer, and I'm like, oh, okay, well maybe this is the time to make a version of that playlist because Rhodes Wurlitzers, they're kind of similar but different, and then put in a bit of time finding some of my most loved tracks with Wurlitzers in it. And I don't know how many followers it's got on that playlist, thousands I'm sure, but like I guess this is a bit of a tangent, but like before TikTok, if my friends, it was just my friends following me on Instagram, every week or month I'd put together Derrick Gee FM, my little playlist, and I'd share it. Derrick Gee FM updated, Derrick Gee FM updated, and like it circled between 70 and 90 likes for years. But I like after I stopped my radio shows, and I'm a couple years, but I did it because it meant something to me. And I feel like all of this training, right? Like radio shows, digging into music, making a playlist literally for like two of my friends to go, yes, every time. And everyone else going like, oh, it's Derrick sharing his dumb playlist. And now I'm making playlists that as soon as I share it, it gets thousands of people and they love it. And people are like, thank you so much. I've listened to it so much and I've discovered all these things. And I'm like, oh, I still think that no one listens to this and it's just me doing this because I nerd out over Wurlitzer playlists and stuff like that. So it's really cool to now like connect with people around the world over something that I've always done, you know?
Yeah, that's the best thing about this whole situation, and why I really wanted to talk to you was that feeling of like, kind of, yeah, that connection or whatever, of like, oh wow, you like this thing and you know lots about it too, and you know, oh wow, this is so cool. Like I'm learning
Yeah.
more stuff too. Like that's the magic feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so this started, the playlist started because I made a video about going to a burger place in Manhattan, and it turned out that Ryuichi Sakamoto
Oh
was behind
yeah.
that playlist. That was where it all popped off, where like people are like, oh, this guy's got good taste and his playlist is amazing. And so I told this story on TikTok that I like these burgers, and I asked where the playlist came from, and they said it was from Ryuichi Sakamoto, who he also does like a very fancy like uh, Japanese. There's a popular story on the internet about how he didn't like the music at a Japanese restaurant and then took over the music and does it for this bar as well, same owner. And that playlist, I wanted them to play my playlist in the bar, so I made a an ode to that place and the feeling that I got from it and the feeling that Ryuichi curated from it. And I made it, and I think I sent it to him during the pandemic. And I was like, I made it for you. If you want to share it, you can share it. If you don't want to, you don't have to. But I just wanted to. They were like, thanks so much. And I don't think they did anything with it, which is fine. And then a year later or something, I was just, oh, funny story. I'll tell it on TikTok. Oh yeah, and I made a playlist, and it's got 12,000 people flocked in and listen to it and love it and tell me about it all the time. And I'm like, that was such a personal thing. That was a personal relationship I have with this place and a feeling. And I sent it to these people because I had to. No one asked me to, and they didn't care about it. And now I'm sending like loads of customers there. Derrick sent me here from TikTok. You're on TikTok, and it's like, oh god, sorry. But it's really like perhaps why I connect with people and people like you is like because we're all similar in that way. We all make playlists around memories and places and sounds, and I wanted to curate this thing that felt like this place and and connected me with people on the internet. And I didn't expect it. I didn't think, oh, this is going to be popular. Oh, people are going to love it. I'm like, you may as well listen to it. There's no one listening to it except for me, so you may as well listen to it. And it kind of was the start of people going like, okay, he's more than just a person that talks about whatever. He actually knows what he's talking about and has some taste worth listening to, which is like kind of wild.
Yeah, but like you said, you've been doing this for a long time. It's like you've got the skills to back it up, which is kind of fantastic. Um, I will answer this question, so it's just in a second. One of the things though that I thought was really cool about the story, and I feel like we should just mention, is Ryuichi Sakamoto is incredible musician. Uh,
Hmm.
uh, he was part of a famous group, Yellow Magic Orchestra, and has a very celebrated career in his own right. In fact, he had
Hmm.
releases on Ninja Tune, and he's always made incredible music.
Hmm.
Highly influential in every circle. I think I don't really know how to articulate this, but I just feel like we need to like let people know. If you don't know who that is, go check him out because he's
He's
incredible.
Tom York meets Brian Eno meets um, who else? Kraftwerk meets. He's everything.
Yeah,
He's one of a kind.
yeah. So yeah, I really wanted to make sure that we didn't. If anyone who's unsure of that person, go find out who they are, because yeah, that will be a great music discovery moment for everybody.
Hell yeah.
If you haven't.
Hell yeah.
So actually, we will be answering questions in here. Thank you, Kid Koo, for popping in the Wikipedia. I mean, yeah, have a quick look at that, and you'll get a gravity for how impactful and influential this person is. Um,
Mm.
but so it's not sure if questions are being read, but wondering how to get out of the mindset of creating the perfect playlist. Not sure why I find making playlists so stressful, and I believe that would be for you, Derrick, to answer.
It's an interesting question. I don't. I'm intrigued by why it might be stressful because I think just make it for you. I think there isn't such a thing as a perfect playlist. I think it's like, I do think a lot about like it's like a DJ set. It's like it takes someone on a journey. Like most of my playlists start slow because it kind of should. It's like if you're opening, if you're starting a set, you don't start with a banger unless you want to start really high energy and keep going. So I think make it for you, but make it an experience. Like, it sounds crazy to think that we're talking about this as a expression, because in some ways I find that a bit bullshit, but I think it's true. Like, I say bullshit because like you're just filing something, you're
Yeah,
like ordering stuff,
it's still
but it's
curation
almost,
though.
it is, and it's I wouldn't go as far to say it's an art form, but it's like it is audio storytelling, it's music storytelling, and you can really do a lot. You can start with, you know, like an ambient track that moves into some spoken word, that moves into, your favorite rock track, and it kind of like, I've wanted to like talk more or think more about this, but like DJ sets and like, the human experience, and it can be tied to it, almost like, to not be too blue about it, but like, sexual experiences, in so much as like I've seen DJs talk about, the obvious is climax, right? Like, build up, cool down, there's a point where you're really like introducing new things. Not to get too weird about
Oh,
it, but I think that
the
there's like a
dynamics.
human element to how you express music over time that can really get people in a place where it's like they want more of it, and you take them down this path until you give the payoff, and then bring them down and back up. And I think it's very tribal in a way, and
Yeah,
I'm getting a bit philosophical, but I think there's a lot to be thought about and talked about in that kind of realm.
absolutely. I think that's a very good way of putting it. And I do think, yeah, whether we want to get into the like interpersonal nature of it or not, it is still like a journey, and it's like a movie or a book, a lot of things, and or even like we talked earlier, like cooking, and
Mm.
the presentation is a really important part. And I do think that maybe that can be paralyzing for people, is like I have to share this with people. And I
Mm.
liked what you said, like just doing it for yourself. And similarly, like I don't think playlists have to be like have a beginning or end even either. That's one of the great things I enjoy about making playlists, is actually they evolve, and they are actually like a nice way of
Mm.
looking at, because music and time have such an interesting relationship, right? As far as memories and things go, you can start a playlist in 20 now, say 2022, and you can keep adding to it till 2030 or 2032, and you
Yeah.
can look back on it and go, wow, look at all these things that I discovered over these years. That is also something like I enjoy about listening to people's playlists, is like their lifetime of
Yeah.
music collection and their life experiences, like you were saying.
Mm. It's like a very good way to understand empathy. I think it's also, our five senses are a very good, like the closest thing we have to time travel. Like, and I think about that a lot. Like, you'll hear a song that you forgot about and haven't heard in 25 years, and it will take you right back there,
Yeah.
you know? And that's incredible. Or a smell, like I still sometimes smell the smell, what it sounds like, smells of a, like the like basketball card packet. You'll smell it in something and you'll go, oh my gosh, I'm right back there.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a powerful thing that's stored in these like now zeros and ones, that
Yeah.
like it's personal to you, or you could remind someone else of it, and you can like totally take them to this place. To go on a tangent real quick, like one of my favorite DJ experiences was at a place in London. It was like a listening bar type thing, and no one was there, and there was a family just grabbing some food. Expensive hi-fi bar. No one was there because the weather was too nice, and the mum was with her kids, and she just took the chair, ignored her kids, put it in the middle of the room, faced the speakers, and like closed her eyes. And I'm
Wow.
pretty sure there are tears in her eyes. And I was playing some Etta James track, and that was kind of like, that's why you do it. Like, to me, it's like, yeah, like I'm not a rave DJ, and she was just like, hold on a second, hold on, this is my song and this is a moment. And she took it all in, she drank it all up, and I'm like, hell yeah, you enjoy that. I can, if I can provide that to you, it's like my pleasure. It was so nice.
Yeah, that's got to be a very fulfilling moment for your life,
Yeah,
to be able to
special.
do
It's like
that.
you're transmitting something through someone else to,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah, that's pretty magical, man. I mean, yeah, I think that's what we all strive for when we do DJ sets, right? Is to have some kind of connection, and when it works, it's that feeling. Oh man, yeah,
Yeah,
that must have been
yeah,
really special.
yeah. I'll never forget it. It was it My Funny Valentine? Like, it was a track that Kanye sampled by Etta James. It's somewhere, but it works on so many levels, and it's nice. That's where I talk about. There's not many places where you can do that, where you
Mm.
can just play some crusty old song that I love out loud, and someone to go, oh my god, So I hope to do more of that in my lifetime.
Yeah, yeah, cafes, man. I feel like cafes and bars. It's one. I mean, I don't want to get too deep into it, but it's like my relationship with music and alcohol and kind of consumption of illicit substances. I get really frustrated personally with that because similar to
Mm.
you, I just really like the music is enough of a high often times for me. And I'm not
Yeah,
discrediting anybody who wants to
yeah,
do
yeah, yeah.
whatever they want to do, but to have an option and a place that you can go where you don't have to be drunk or be high to appreciate
Mm.
music is similarly like one of those things. Even we were talking about finding a space for those to live, because obviously that's not going to be that lucrative. Obviously
Yeah,
the bars sell
yeah,
booze and that's why you're having music
exactly.
there. Or fuels the same thing, but yeah.
It always comes back to that, doesn't it?
Yeah,
The
the economics.
the driver, the economic drivers of success,
Yeah.
and what I do is not that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think there's a balance. Like you can definitely like find it, perhaps. Like I mean, that's been the struggle personally. I'm sorry if I'm oversharing, but that's always been like
No,
the challenge. And as a DJ, is like, oh, how do you like, you know, do the thing that you love, without sacrificing too much of your integrity of, working with in places where people are often harassed, molested, poisoned, and
mm,
that's something that
true.
we have to kind of think about if we want to maintain a career in that, and yeah, it's dangerous for a
Yeah,
lot of people, right?
yeah, it's heavy. That's very true. It's the DJ. It's not the DJ responsibility, but it's like at the same time, it's like you see like events where things get too crazy, and you when things get crazy, the DJ is kind of responsible for like how people have gotten there, how it makes people feel. It's kind of very animalistic in certain ways.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to go too far down this, but Travis Scott and being, held
Yeah,
accountable for
exactly.
the Astroworld stuff, and it's like, man, like that's a yeah. I don't want to take a side on that, but like it's a very complicated discussion because it you are somewhat in control, but you're also not. So like, how can you be responsible for people's actions? You know,
Yeah,
it's like you're firing people up, but you can't. It's once they're fired up, you can't tell them to stop.
I don't know how you recover from being a part of something where loss of life happens. That's getting very deep and dark, and this is a light podcast, but
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, yeah, lives are precious, every single one, and to bring people together by the tens of thousands is incredible. To lose even one is like, I don't know how I'd be able to continue.
Yeah.
So, I guess on when you have that much mass of people, something's bound to happen at some point.
And I think there's also like that discussion about, like someone like Avicii or whatever, where there's all these people that are around you that depend on you, that all of a sudden you're responsible for their welfare and well-being, and they may
Mm,
not have your best interests either. So it's like, again, comes back to the economics of it all. But
mm.
without going too, we're going to cut it there because I know that we could get pretty deep on that.
For sure, for sure.
We've got to be careful with the energy. But on the positive side of things that you're doing, you've talked to people like Mr. Hudson on your channel, and you're really shining a light on a lot of cool things that maybe people don't know about your
Mm,
hi-fi stuff. And the other day you posted
mm.
about the sound burger. This is probably a very weird way to transition, but this is so cool.
Battery operated, or you can plug it in as well. It's got a handle on it. You can. Uh, Sorry, should I explain what it is?
Yeah, yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So in the 80s, I think Audio Technica had this. Sony had a similar one as well, where it's like a portable record player with a handle. Um, it's battery powered, and it's basically like a little like it's like a it's like it is like a sound burger. The record is the patty, and on either side of it, these kind of clamps together, and holds the record. And so, celebrating their 60th anniversary of being Audio Technica, they announced that they were releasing, I think, 2,000 of these,
That's it?
but they're like a new and updated version with like that has Bluetooth and USB-C and all that sort of stuff. And look, I mess with things that are just quirky and interesting, and I have a design background, and so there's a small amount of people in my comments when I shared about it that's like, it doesn't sound good, it's all this sort of stuff. I was like, I don't care, it's cool.
So cool.
Who cares about the rest of it?
Well, and it also kind of maybe solves a certain problem about having places to share music. You could probably play that anywhere, right? Nowadays?
Yeah, yeah. It's well, like, look, I do find like record players with Bluetooth slightly like hurts my brain a little bit in terms of like analog and digital, but
Yeah.
it's like how things are consumed these days. And I think it's, yeah, you can bring a record player to the park, you can stream it via Bluetooth. It looks cool, it feels cool. It's like, I don't know, I like weird tech. You know, weird tech should always exist.
Yeah, it is just yeah. The design side of it is so very. I mean, I can't believe is it their 60th anniversary or is it the Soundburger? It can't be the Soundburger's
The
60th anniversary.
No, no, yeah, it's Audio Technica. I had to research that because I'm like, wait a second, I don't think that was around 60 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. To celebrate the 60th anniversary of Audio Technica. Okay, cool. It's
Yeah,
40 years old though. That's
yeah. I want one. I'm not going to get one because I don't need another thing, but they're cool, and I thought people should know about it.
yeah. And if you're a beat maker or whatever, and you're into getting dusty in the crates, this might be a useful tool, especially with
That's it.
USB-C.
That's
That's
it.
great.
Yeah, exactly. Future.
But since we're talking about the Soundburger, what is your dream hi-fi setup?
Oh, um, my dream hi-fi setup is having a place where I can listen loud to music without disturbing anyone. Because like, I live in an apartment. I think my dream hi-fi setup is my office. That's a massive listening room, and I can just like, because I have headphones and earphones and stuff like that, and you have to like be conscious of many different things, and I think that is like, I've talked on my channel a little bit about like music in the air and like how important that is and how not enough people do it. And I would like to do that as much as possible, but there is a consideration for people around you
Mm.
and the stuff you listen to. So in an ideal world, I have like a prism that I enter that no one no one can hear inside, and people can join if they like. But I think in terms of setup, my setup is pretty decent in terms of like the speakers anyway that I have. But like, I'm very much into. This is gonna sound like the nerdiest thing I've said about hi-fi, because my TikTok started talking about hi-fi, and I'm not as into it as people think I am. But there are these things called clipshawns, which are like as tall as me, you know, you know, and they are meant to sit in corners of rooms, and they're meant to fill the room with sound. And David Mancuso was famously, New York loft parties use that at the start of like dance music culture. And I think that I would love to have those. I have the smaller version of those. I was going to say mini, but the speakers I have are the size like washing machines, so they're not mini. But the half size version of those. And I think that the dream is to just have a room surrounded by these speakers with, me in the center, and, and playing. I don't really care as much about like what record player, or if I play records or MP3s or anything like that. I think sure, there's a quality question, but like, yeah, it's more about like big speakers that push air in a room that I can do loud is the perfect setup.
I've got a visual picture now in my mind of like a Frank Gehry designed house with like Herman Miller furniture in it and these
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
speakers with enough space, maybe in the woods somewhere or on a nice island,
yeah. Oh yeah,
remote enough where you can just sound bath yourself and just
yeah,
take it all in. Yeah, that
yeah,
sounds
yeah.
really
Exactly,
sweet.
precisely. Yeah, yeah. It's very personal, and I do it sometimes in my apartment, but it's like you can only be so obnoxious for so long. And like the thing is with those speakers, the ones I'm talking about, these like horn. I think I cut myself off. The thing I'm interested in is horn loaded speakers is what they call them because they push the music out in wide into space. Is electronic music sounds incredible on it, which you wouldn't think for like really old speakers. But I think electronic music, and that's probably why they worked in like with David Mancuso. There's like it just pushes out this like, because it's not like super sub bass, and it's like it's all like lots of mid range, lots of danceable. Like you need that in the air. It feels like you're in your own little festival type thing. So I think, you know, idea would be looking out to the ocean and having, this set up one day. So check back with me when in 50 years and see where I am.
Yeah,
Hopefully I'll be there.
that sounds lovely.
Uh,
And yeah.
Am I, am I allowed to ask about yours, or is that not the point of this podcast?
Oh, yeah. I
Your
mean,
like ideal?
not really qualified, honestly. I don't think to really have a opinion on that. I don't know enough about it. I have like I make music, so I have like some Yamaha HS80s, and I have some Genel X down there, and I used to work in at a music retailer, so I got like an understanding of studio monitors, but that was really kind of like my
Right.
limitation of speaker understanding. But I watched The Maestro,
Yeah.
which is the documentary about David Mancuso and the Loft, which I think is on
I need
YouTube.
to
The
watch that.
Maestro.
Oh, really?
Yeah, maybe it
Watch
was
that.
when I watched it, but it was great because he talked about like yeah what he created the loft for, and the experience was very similar actually to what you're talking about. Where I mean, you probably know this, but for anyone who's listening who doesn't, was like he really wanted to create it. The loft was an atmosphere where it was really to go to appreciate music, and I mean obviously there was drugs and stuff, but it wasn't like designed for. It wasn't a bar. It was like a space
Yeah.
where people could hang out, and so I do think that like the intention of that is like that says a lot about why it was what it was and why the music that came out of it are what it was. Is why it's so special and so magical is because yeah the intention behind what he was trying to create was not a club. It was not economically motivated. It was motivated as a sanctuary, a safe place for people of different backgrounds and or sexual orientations and identity and stuff like that to hang out. And I think that's so beautiful, man. Like, I love that, and I love that music is part of that. Like that was the central piece. Was like the music is going to bring us all together, and I'm like, that's just fucking beautiful.
Hell yeah. And maybe that's what's happening with like you and I, like connecting and what I'm doing on TikTok. And I think that like I did, as most of us or everyone on here grew up on the internet. And I think that like we do crave connection and connection through music. And like I'm very comfortable to say I am not a club person or a festival person, but I am a person that likes to listen to music loud, And
Yeah.
I think that, you know, people connect with me over that. And I'd like, whether that place exists in real life or maybe it is like this on the internet where we can kind of share and talk and experience and learn and then, take that into our own personal realms. And if I have, for better or for worse, influenced a lot of people to buy big speakers, which is not the intention, but it's like brilliant. If you can like, blast your favorite songs, that's quite a nice influence to have.
Yeah, I mean, you also do them a favor of knowing about great headphones too, which I appreciate. So yeah, thank you for those posts as well. It's cool because like yeah, obviously, I think one of the things I really appreciate about stuff like that though is that you're showcasing that there's more options than just Beats by Dre or Bose or I mean Bose are great, but that what you initially see, Skull Candy or something, there's like
Yeah.
another layer. There's another level you can go, and it's not necessarily going to be marketed to you, but if you know about it, and these are boutique small companies, you can really have an experience that you would otherwise not, and you celebrate that, and I love that.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that because I I don't like audio culture. I think it's so lame. It's like people that are more interested in the technology than they are in music. And I have a family friend that will chew my ear off about all the equipment they have, but they couldn't tell me one song they like, you know?
Damn.
And I know, it's like, and when I first started my channel on TikTok and I shared my speakers because I thought people would find it entertaining, all these people were hating on what my setup looked like and all, and it's all men, and it was all like, why don't you this? Why don't you don't know this? And it's just like, dude, like who cares what I have? Or like, it's my room. Like, and I think what I'm trying to do is like bring a human side to, I talk about mostly music, but sometimes audio stuff, and I try to humanize it. It's like, this is what's good about it. This is what you'll get out of it, you know? And I think for me, anything regarding audio and is that I've heard a speaker and gone, I didn't know music could sound like this. That's all. It's not about like wave guides and frequency responses and stuff like that. It's like, what? Like, it's quite spiritual.
Yeah.
And then you're like, and then unfortunately it is a bit addictive. It's like, I want to hear that again, you know. And it doesn't, I listen to songs played off my phone if I'm in the kitchen and I don't have a speaker on me, and I enjoy the song as much. But if you can afford to, or if you're interested to explore it, you can also find a version of that where if you've got the time, energy, space, that you can hear these songs in ways you've never heard them before. And I think that's an incredible thing that not many people know about, because we've got our Bluetooth speakers, we've got our little earphones and stuff like that. And it doesn't take away from the songwriting and the song and how much you enjoy it, but I think it like is so special when you do hear it, and it's like can really like alter your brain in certain ways.
Yeah, I think that's so important, especially for DJs, because I think we hear music on big systems so much, and we understand that almost like by second nature, right? Like, I think a lot about how DJ music often is made purely just to be played loud, you know, like,
Yeah.
because some of the songs just sound like shit when you listen to them on your computer. You're like, what? Who would listen to this? Oh, that's right. You're meant to play it on a massive system with 50,000 people. Got it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have a big bugbear about like low level, mid level volume music, because it's like you're not pushing enough air for it to actually express itself. It's like you can completely change the experience of a song by turning it up. I've heard songs that it's just like, oh yeah, whatever, and then you play it loud and it's like, this is actually amazing. And it's like, it's meant to hit you.
Yeah.
You know, it's not meant to be like,
Yeah.
you know. So I don't know. I think that people resonate with me on that. That I want people to hear the music they love as good as they can or can afford in some aspects of their life, really.
Yeah. Hey, look, I realize we're taking up a lot of your time here, Derrick, and everyone else who's listening. Thank you so much for sticking with us through this conversation. There's just a couple questions I have before we wrap it up. So, you know, there's many other questions I'd like to talk to you about, so perhaps another time. But
I enjoy it.
yeah, for now, I think, you know, you kind of touched on this. It's literally what our podcast is about, and we ask everybody this question who comes on the show. But I would like to know what the power of music means to you.
Deep. I think I touched on a lot of it in this conversation, which is good. It's like, it is a like, okay, this just came to my head. I'm gonna sound like a dickhead for saying it, but like, it's like a vibrational expression of who you are. It's like and what you're feeling at that very moment. Like I notice the types of music I play at certain times, you connect on that same wavelength. I'm very cognizant of like what I want to listen to on like a Saturday morning is very specific to, it's Saturday. I always play something loud, and I play something very open and bright, and it's just, it catches you on that wavelength. And like, it's like study music, or like, you listen to a banging house set when you're working and stuff like that, and it matches that energy or lifts you up, or like, if you're really sad or you're in a breakup and you listen to something really sad, like you kind of find the soundtrack, or that vibration that matches with you, that kind of like you envelop into this whole, like, you can kind of transport yourself to like a time or place, or like inside yourself. It's like, it's got a lot of power to like internalize or externalize your feelings at that very moment, and connect. You know, I'm not a spiritual person, but it's probably the closest thing to it for me. In terms of connecting with something that is obviously someone made and is tangible, but is also has this like magic to it that you just can't create on your own.
That's it, man. It's great to hear you say that, because it is a very unique answer. I mean, often we get a lot of similar answers, but the vibrational aspect of it is really cool, man. I really like that.
It's yeah, well, it's like it's sound waves, right? It's kind of the creepy
Yeah.
thing about it. It's like you can't see it, but you can feel it. And you know,
It's almost like
it's
witchcraft, right? Like people talk about it like that.
totally, some people would hate it because it's like very woo woo. It's very like uh uh it's the same, it could be put in the same realms as like horoscopes and things, but it's like
Too
there is
tangible.
such a thing
Yeah.
as like chemistry and vibe, and mood and tone, and when things are tense in a room, when it's instinctual. It's like that whole thing of like, animals know when there's an earthquake or a tsunami happening, and they can go up high before us humans know, because they feel it,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, we are animals, and it's unfortunate to say, but it's true. And yeah, I think that we are very often disconnected with that, and I think that music does connect us more with, like, in tuning ourselves with that. So I don't know. That's my
That's awesome.
like,
Yeah, that's really good, man. And I thank you so much. One of the other things I thought you did on your TikTok channel, which was really awesome, was you talked a little bit about, just a little earlier, about, you talked about how you initially started posting a lot about hi-fi stuff, and then you kind of made a concerted effort to post about other things. And you
mm,
also talked a little bit about just kind of the democratization of DJ culture. And I would recommend anyone who hasn't
mm,
watched that to
mm.
check it out on your channel. But um, could you just quickly just talk about your feelings about that, if you know what I'm referring to?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I was talking about, like, I'm seeing a lot of, especially young women DJs, showing their process of learning how to DJ on TikTok, which is like, as you would know, as you would know, Matt, like a no-no in DJ culture. It's like, you, but that was always my anxiety. I didn't have decks back in the day. I didn't know how to DJ. I didn't have any friends who DJ. I didn't know how to do it, and that probably just wigged me out of being a club DJ altogether, because I just didn't know where to start, how to do it, what to play, what to, and the culture isn't built for that. You're meant to turn up and know what you're doing.
Mm.
And the first time I did a DJ set, I brought like you know, a controller box, and I bought all this stuff and cables, and it was like, it was feeding back, and it was all wrong, and it was all stressful, and it was quite traumatic. And it was like, the opposite is happening on TikTok, where like people are like, oh, I want to learn how to DJ. I'm going to learn, and I'm going to do day one, day two, and I'm going to share that process. And I think that is the democratization of it. And I think, the cons of it are that like DJs are meant to like serve the people, and they aren't meant to be like just like the center of attention. They are more so now, and that's just how the culture is going. But I do think it's important that club culture isn't just gate kept people that, you know, you have to know so much about music and all the technical things. And like, I see people talk about the sync button in a more favorable way these days, because
Great.
it's like, yeah, because it's true. The sync button is not where you define your music taste. And it's like, um, you've got BPMs on the screen, you've got the sound wave on the screen. It's all sync. You know, like if I can line up if I can visually line up where the start of the song is, I'm using sync. You know, the only place where you can't do that is vinyl, and that's its own gatekeep thing as well. But it's like, everyone get over it. Like, if you can play music that makes people move and have a good time, then you're good. If you can't, you know, you can get better at it. But I think there's so many, like, you can't do that, and I do think it's very male driven. It's like the audiophile world. It's like, you can't use these cables, you can't do that, and it's like, people shouldn't care about that. It's just music. It's not that serious. It's just like, we're pressing buttons and we're introducing people to stuff. And I think lastly, like, if I share a song, people say, no, I'm gatekeeping this. And it's like, music, you didn't make the song. Like, they made the song for people to hear. It's not up to you. Like, it's, if someone likes it, then other people should like it too. And if you want to share it with people, they should. And it's, you know, I think music needs to be out to as many people as possible. And I think, people embracing DJ culture and DJing and sharing the process is like a wonderful evolution.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was really particularly taken with that, and I was thinking, like, almost like, what can we do to make sure more people feel included? And I know that might be like the biggest no-no of all time, but, you know, how do you?
Yeah.
I mean, that's literally what I do for my job. You know, is like educate people on things that our software does, and I have so much joy in doing that. Like, I'm so grateful to have my job for that
Yeah.
sole reason of being like, here, check this out. How are you going to use it? You know, I'm like,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
really sweet.
I see some people do crazy things with the sync button too. It's a tool.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Oh
where
yeah.
they've got like 5-6 tracks going at one time, and they're using the faders as its own thing. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, wait, what? Like,
Oh, absolutely. You only have two hands. Like, you know, if you want to do more than two things, then sync, you need it. Absolutely.
yeah,
And yeah, I'm glad that you feel that way. And that's kind of was my counter to the people that are like anti-sync. I was like, okay, dude, like, you understand how to mix two songs together. That's cool. But like, you can do so much more with sync because you all of a sudden don't have to manage those two things staying together. You can add more things and add other
yeah,
elements and add other people, and everyone will be together, and that's a good thing
yeah,
at
yeah.
the end of the
And
day.
it's like, those dinosaurs die out, and I think that you give tools to new generations to play with and find new ways to do stuff with. And I think that's like the epitome of TikTok, right? Like, it was started as people duetting each other and dancing to music, and now it's like you and I connecting over stuff that's very deep and nuanced, but there's enough people that connect with it. And like, I'm sure they didn't design it for someone like me to be on there, and I didn't plan to be someone like that on there, but it works, and now we're here, and it's like ultimately a positive thing. Which is why I will always be like a defender of TikTok. When people go, you know, it's like, dude, you don't understand. If you're on there, it's so positive most of the time, you know, and people want to share, and people want to educate themselves, and people want to talk, and yeah, it's amazing.
Well, I hope that I can do that same thing for you and Twitch at some point, because I do think there will be a parallel there that you will also find very rewarding.
I hope so.
But yeah, please continue. Thank you so much for being our guest today, and thank you for sharing what you share on TikTok and here today. And is there anything or anybody that you'd like to shout out or mention at this moment, or
Shout out
anything?
you. Shout out you, Matt. Yeah, I think your questions have been excellent. You're a really great interviewer, and I think it's you allow a very, you know, interesting conversation to flow, and I appreciate it. I think it was like, you know, I didn't think that speaking for you, you put this amount of time in my calendar, and I'm like, I don't know what we're gonna do, and we could keep talking for hours. So I think that's a really, really sweet thing. So thank you.
Thank you so much, man. Honestly, when I put the time on the calendar, I have a bit of an existential crisis of like, how can I make this enjoyable for people? So thank you. And thank you to everyone who tuned in. Ricky Rock,
Thank you,
Hiku,
everyone.
L Train. Great to see you, L Train, from Manchester as well. So it's Sue, Stevie Pre. And I know I'm missing people. Burnt CDs, Love Lisa, Kid Koo. I think I said you already. But yeah, thank you everyone who's listening. DJ Ember, the Good Music Twitch fam, Random Play. Yeah, everyone who listens later. Antarctic. Antarcture. I'm
And
sorry.
architecture.
Yeah, Antarctic. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
And make sure you follow Derrick on TikTok. And yeah, tune in next time we have this. I'm not actually sure when our next interview is going to be, but I'm sure you'll be able to stay tuned to Serato to be aware of when we have the next guest on here. But thank you again, Derrick. Hope you enjoy
so
your day
much.
in Sydney, Australia.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.